Hey, this is Gene. I just had a couple things I need to talk about today. This might be 2 or 3 videos today. I don't want to do like a 50-minute video on video. So I'll just talk about a couple things. So this will be the first video, so I'll talk about what I'm going to talk about. So you see another video come down, the 2 or 3 people actually watch my videos. I'm going to talk about Florida State, what this means for Alabama, what it means for the program at Florida State. I'm going to talk about Stephen Howson, Strevert Paddock, coach, personality, media personality. I want to talk about what I think about him and the message that he's sending to young men. I think it's great. And finally, I want to talk about probably the biggest cancer in fan channels, Mark Goldbridge, or was it Brett Dicieria, or whatever his name is. I want to talk about him, and that might take a long one because I've been talking about this guy for a long time, but he's gotten to the point now that I think he needs to be called out again. And every time I do this, I run the risk of all his minions coming out and saying, I'm only doing it for clicks. No, I'm just trying to inform this younger man that sometimes just because you're so popular doesn't mean that your opinion is really relevant at this time, because you've been wrong so many other times. And the arrogance, the delusional statements that you say recently, how you've termed the term glinios, and your minions go around on Twitter and stuff using this shit, it's really a detriment to the team. And I don't think that was what you meant to do when you first started the channel, but you are that, and I'll talk about it in a video. But first, let's talk about the biggest result for me. Obviously, it was important for Manchester United to win, but for Florida State to go out and dominate an SEC team again, which we've done, this is not new. We've done it to LSU twice. Last year was an aberration of the last 3 or 4 years. Now we were up and down years before that, especially around COVID. I don't look at anybody that won any championships during COVID, I don't look at that as real. And I think that maybe Alabama won one in that, or I don't even know. I didn't watch college football when there was no fans in the stands. There is no college football without the fans. And that's the point that needs to be set as well. So, now, we moved to Florida in '71 when I was 6 years old. I'm 60 years old. We had like 4 channels. And the first team I was watching on UHF 44, I think it was WTOG out of Tampa. There was a game on, and I think it might have been the Sun Bowl, but it was Florida State. And I just fell in love with Florida State at that time. And they were there. I mean, obviously my first love was the St. Louis Cardinals, the baseball team. My father used to take me to those games, and when he got divorced from my mom, I would go up and see him, and we would go and watch the team. And we were not that good in the '70s. I love the players we had. I love them. I could probably name all of them now. I like the way that we played. I like how baseball was played back then. But getting to Florida State, that was my first love when it came to college football. And we had several years that we were very good before anybody knew we were good. 79, 80, we were undefeated. We lost to Oklahoma in the Super Bowl. That was 24-7, I think it was. The next year, I think it was, we played them again, and we lost by 1 point. That was probably our best team we ever had. We lost 2 games that year by 1 point, both in the Orange Bowl. It's like when people tells me that whenever we play in the Orange Bowl, like in bowl games, that it's a whole game for us. It's not. We don't do well. Of course, the Orange Bowl's not there anymore. And obviously, last time I went to see them play down in South down there is when we lost to Penn State in the Orange Bowl. Again, we didn't. It's not a home game. There was 80% or 90% of that crowd was Penn State fans. Now, I was very hesitant, but I did think that there would be some sort of response. I thought that we would be able to hold with them. Again, we've played many SEC teams. In the years that were good, we could definitely hold our own. When people tell me that if we went to the SEC that we wouldn't have dominated like we did in the ACC, I'm not going to say we won 17 or whatever it is, like 13 years in a row winning the ACC or something that we did. We didn't lose forever. That there's a possibility we would have done that, but we definitely would have won a couple of championships, SEC championships during those years. We were that good. We maybe not go undefeated as many times as we did in conference. That, yeah, there's a possibility that's true. However, we've always done pretty well against SEC teams, always. So I didn't think they were going to blow us out. Okay, I thought we came with something. I just think that there was something. The quarterback, I think he was the type of quarterback that was going to give Alabama fits. And this is whether it's Saban or not. I mean, whatever he said about, well, Saban isn't there, I don't think Saban could have stopped him either. Because Alabama, let's say, the last 20 years have had big-time issues dealing with a mobile quarterback. It's not new. And that's how you actually beat them. If you can run the ball and you can have a good quarterback that's mobile, you can definitely beat them. And there are a lot of examples that do that. What I like to actually see of this is that all year long, I mean, Alabama had a bad season for them. And again, before I get to that, I just want this whole thing about Alabama being this and this and this, okay? There was a time when I was stationed in Mississippi, I used to go watch Alabama and I would pay $10 to go see them play. They would win 7 or 8 games a year. And this is before Saban got there, under the Shula administration and all that shit. They were an average football team in the SEC. They were nowhere good at all. Now, they had different times that they were good when they beat Miami in the Super Bowl and won the championship that year with Gene as their coach. They've had good teams in there, but they were very average in the SEC. And they're on the way down. You know, it's not like they've been a monolith for 40 fucking years. They weren't. This happens to every club, every team. It happens to us. It happens to Florida. It's happened to a lot of good teams. Florida back then was just an average team too. They won 7 or 8 games a year. At that time we were dominant in a lot of ways. We should have been playing a lot more in the championship game, but we'd end up losing to Miami by 1 point, or we lose to Florida at the end of the game, or something like that, and we wouldn't be able to play in the BCS. And we had other things that we got in. You know, we probably shouldn't have got over Miami that 1 year. You know, and Oklahoma, we should have obviously destroyed them. They didn't do nothing the entire game, but we didn't do anything else. But this idea that they've always been great, or then let's say the Savior came in and saved them from all that. No, I think what he did is he had a lot of money and he had 10 really good coaches that coached that team. They've always had the biggest staff in all of college football, and it's always been helpful. And they've always had several mulligans later when they get. Now there have been times they've been undefeated and they won the championship. Great for them. But the SEC has always had a mulligan when it came to BCS. Obviously in the playoffs 2 years ago, you get a mulligan because you play in the SEC because it's considered the best conference in the league in the college football. So you get that mulligan. If you lose early in the year, we'll let you come back in. Or Florida did the same thing. They lost at home and they still got to get into play. Now they went in, they won the SEC championship game, and everything lost, and they got to play us again after we've already beaten Florida. All right, this was the year that we should have won the championship that year. But a lot of people died or lost, and then they gave the ability to them to come back and play us in the Super Bowl, and that's the game I watched. And for about 3 quarters, that game was close, and then we lost more work done. They just played better than us that day. They were probably better talented that year than we were. But getting back to, I hear the stuff now that the empire is over. And I would love to say that, you know, as I go and I see God in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years or tomorrow, that I would love the fact that it would be Florida State that destroyed the empire that is Alabama. It's not going to fucking happen. It's not going to happen. They have so much money, so much history. They may have a blip, but they're going to always be a team to be recognized. You can't do that with Florida State. I still think the Florida State is, I'm not going to say at the top of the Blue Bloods, but of the modern football dynasties, we have to be somewhat considered in there. We have to be at the same level as Florida, and I think we should be above them because we won 2 championships undefeated. We have the same amount of championships that they do. I think that we have to, maybe it's the next level. I mean, we're not Michigan having that type of history. We're not Notre Dame. We're not Oklahoma, even Nebraska. These teams have been around forever. We were a women's college, okay, but modern football, and that's why I think Florida State is still very popular around. And it's shocking to me because it's a small state school. Now, yeah, it's gotten bigger over the years. I remember when I tried to go in, and they basically took everybody back then when I was in high school. If you could just get through high school, I had a very low GPA. I just did not go to school. Once back then, I think you probably could do it now. If you get enough credits, I wouldn't go to school. So I was like, and then I went, and they accepted me because I had decent ACT or SCT and ACT. I think I had like, back then I think it was based on 1600, and I think I had like around 1380, and I think that my ACT was like 90, 29 or 30. So I was above normal, let's just say, but I just didn't go to school, and that's what I had. My car, I did what I did. I didn't do anything really bad. I didn't go out and like smoke or anything. I just didn't go to school. There was no challenge there. And unfortunately, I had the same issue with my son. He's very similar to me when it comes to that. He just can't deal with structure when it comes to sitting in there but still, I went there for about a minute and I said, you know what, this is not good for me. And I had to go get that structure, and I went to the military, and that helped me 100%. And I wish that my son would do that, but he's getting up in age now. They would still take him, but he's just not. It's not how he believes. Okay, he's just not. He won't do it. He doesn't believe the government and all that. He's grown up now, and he thinks that everything's against everybody. I get it. I do. But this idea that now Alabama's just the empire was going to shut down. I was like, could they make a movie about this? When you think about what happened to us in 2023, we went through that season undefeated. We lose our quarterback in a stupid way, and I want to blame the coach. He should never started that game. And what really is frustrating me is this college is just down the road for me. And this team came across and went down to Tallahassee, and they broke his leg. And yeah, we started that game really poorly. But as soon as he left, we put like 50 on him. And then we went on, we did what we did. We went to Florida to beat Florida. Now, it wasn't a great Florida team, but it was an SEC team on the road, and we beat them up, and we covered the spread. Then we beat Louisville, which had a very, very decent team that year. They weren't elite, but they were the top 15, let's say. And we covered the spread. Alabama gets in because they threw a 4th and 31 against Auburn to win that game. And they get in because Saban is going to retire. So on Facebook and on Twitter, I said after the game, I said, this is revenge for the snub and getting a coach in there, the team that didn't deserve to be in there. Now, did they play okay against Michigan? Yeah, they could have beat them. But that's why I still thought that we would have played Michigan well enough. Even with the backup, I think we would have beat them. You can't look at the Orange Bowl that year and think that we could knock on in there, go toe-to-toe, knowing what the goal would have been at the end of that, to win that game or put Michigan on blast. We had the best defense in the league or in the college that year. We definitely could have. And I think they only scored, did they get 20 against? They got 27 in overtime, right? Or was that the end of the game? I don't know if it went to overtime. But they got 27 against Alabama's defense. They would have got more than 14 against us. And the question is, could we have got a pickoff? I'm not saying we would have won the championship. I think that they made a very bad decision there. Now, I'm biased because I think Florida State should have been in there. And we should have if we'd have got beat by 50, then we got beat by 50. People all brought up, well, what happened to TCU? But TCU beat Michigan the year before in the playoff. And then the next year, Michigan goes undefeated and wins everything. Just because Georgia beat the shit out of them in the championship doesn't mean anything. You can't deny what TCU did in the Rose Bowl that year, beating Michigan. So TCU, okay, 70 years ago, TCU was one of the best teams in the league. They were not looked at that level, and they beat one of the blue bloods in the Rose Bowl in the semifinals. So anyway, and I would love to come out here and just go against all these, the ESPN, all that people said what they've said about Florida State over the years. like even Herb's Greet, which I kind of like. What he said about Florida State years ago, about our team in 2014. I think that he thought that he didn't like the fact that we were very arrogant. We just won the championship, and we would end up showing up for one quarter to beat teams till we got and lost to Oregon. We probably were probably the best team that year, but we just, we didn't try hard enough. You can't do that. You can't go from 100% to now 97% against that level of competition. And at the end of the year against Oregon, we had too many mistakes, and they beat us for us. But Oregon didn't win the championship that year, so I'm not sure that we would have beat. That was it? Chicago? Yeah, Ohio State won that year. I'm not sure that we would have beat them. I would have taken our chances. So it's been a while, and then we have the ability to get to the playoff, and they snub us because we're from the ACC and we're Florida State, and there's probably some sort of bias against Florida State because of something that maybe the players did in the background, or we want to make sure that Saban is there on the national stage, because that will be the bigger story. If he wins up his last year, they win the championship, that will be the bigger story than Florida State coming out of the ashes to get back to the elite group of college football teams. So they decided on that, and that's what this is now. It's all entertainment, and I have to understand that to a point. But I was upset about it, and I live in Alabama. I don't live in Tuscaloosa. I live in northern Alabama. But yeah, after that game, after they stubbed us, I put my shit out and put my Florida State out, and pretty much everybody in Huntsville that I ran into said it was wrong. And a lot of them were Alabama fans. Now, obviously, a lot of them Auburn fans. So it's it was wrong, and I think that karma sometimes comes back, and I think that Alabama really thought, because we were 2-10, that all the pundits were just glazing them up like they did to us before we played Georgia Tech last year. I remember that Saban said this is probably the top 5 offensive line, defensive line in college football, and we go out there and lose to Georgia Tech. Now, Georgia Tech was a decent team, and that's not. They just beat. They beat somebody on the road. I forget. They won their first game this year. They're probably the 3rd or 4th best team in the ACC this year. So, we just it was the shock of losing or not having to be able to precipitate in the playoff. It was a hangover that we couldn't get over, and we needed to win that first game, and we didn't do it. And I think that I don't know, I'm not going to say it's a character. These are 18, 19-year-old guys. I don't think it's anything with character. I think that they're like, we did everything we're supposed to do, and they still took it away from us, and now we just lost to Georgia Tech. And you're not 100%. You have to be, because the talent level is very close. Some teams have a lot more depth. And I thought that the difference would have been in Alabama versus Florida State is the depth. And I thought that in the depth, they would win the game later in the game. But I think that once we now I look at Alabama as a bully, all right? And we were a bully for a long time, okay? But once you hit the bully in the mouth, some bullies can come back and respond to that. Some others kind of like lay back. We smashed them in the mouth in the second quarter, and we just ran the ball down their throat, and they couldn't do anything about it. And kind of think that what Michigan did as well. There have been years and years that we've ran for 200 yards and actually lost games because we do stupid shit. But we ran for over 200 yards and just said we're bigger, stronger, and faster and more physical. And we out-SEC'd them. We out-SEC'd them. Or we used the Big Ten, the old stool, where we just used a run to set up all the other things. And this is what we did to them, and they could not respond to it. And I knew when we got Malzahn, I thought that was going to be a good thing, that Alabama was our first team, and it was going to help us to have that. And after our quarterback said what he said, you thought that had been enough for Alabama to have. They just obviously didn't respect us, but still they were in that game, and they had opportunities to get into that game and do something, but they didn't do it. And that's all down to the players, the coaches, and everything else. So I wanted to say thank you to them. Doesn't mean we're going to be 11 or going to win every game this year. We have to go on the road. I'm not sure if we play Miami on the road. We do pretty well in Miami. So I'm not worried about that. I think it'll be a good game, but we're going to have to get to the quarterback in those games. We're going to have to be able to run the football. Before I go, I know there was a guy that got shot on the team. I forgot his name. He's a freshman. So I'll just say, apparently he's okay. He's probably out for this year, but it's unfortunate that when they go back home to see their families, a lot of these players come from bad areas, and shit like this happens. I don't think it was somebody was upset because we beat Alabama. I don't think some crazy-ass Florida person came out and started shooting them. I just think it's a product of where they live. And that's unfortunate because we have a lot of players on Florida State that come from bad areas, bad backgrounds. That's why Bobby Bowden was like a legend in the black community, because he uplifted so many of them and their families, and getting those players into the NFL, getting to look at God and all that shit. That's why he is what he is. And I've always liked Norval, even though we were 2-10 last year. There's no way we couldn't get rid of him because he's got a huge buyout. So I'm just glad about what happened. I'm not going to be gloating around here. I put my Florida State stuff up. It sometimes karma works. I remember that day when we didn't get in, and I could just imagine what it would feel for those players that went through everything, lost their quarterback, went on the road, won those games, and then be say you're not good enough. And then clearly there was a hangover the next year, and then they came back the next year. Now we got rid of players and got new players in. But whatever happens, I just want us to be competitive against the better teams, do our business against teams that shouldn't be as good as us. It would be kind of a terrible, normal thing for Florida State to now lose to, what are we playing, East Tennessee or East Texas? It would be total thing for Florida State to do that. But, I'm proud for what they did. The new stadium, or the new refurbished stadium, apparently it was very loud there, so that's good to see. So we'll see what happens. It's different now. College football is totally different. That's why I don't watch it as much. But it's still Florida State. And you're talking about, I was 8-year-olds or 7-year-olds, and I fell in love with them then. So it's not like I'm all of a sudden just not follow them. So I'm just going to end this video on this. Thank you for watching. Let me know who you support for, and anything that happened to you this weekend. And we'll talk about it in the comments. You guys have a good day. Bye.